Hello everybody, it's Sylvie. Welcome back to Tarot Magpie. Almost forgot my own channel name there. I hope you're doing good, yeah. So today is going to be the final installment in my collection videos, the state of the archives or whatever it is I'm calling them. This is the fourth and final installment. This is all of my tarot and tarot related books that I own. And I've got to say, I didn't realise I had quite so many until I gathered them all together and realised the stack is nearly as big as me, which is, well, that's exaggeration, but it's a large stack. So little disclaimer up front, I have not read all of these in their entirety. These are not necessarily recommendations or the best books that you can get on any given topic. They are just the ones that I own. And I'm also not including, I do have a little stack on my shelf of oversized guidebooks that came with decks. I'm not including those, but I am including deck-specific guidebooks that you have to buy separately. Does that make sense? Because I feel like that made sense. I've also just spotted one that I did not manage to grab, so bear with me. Okay, I really do have everything now, and without further ado, let's jump into it. So I have vaguely categorized these, and first up are my RWS based tarot books. You're like Tarot 101, what do the cards mean kind of books. And first up, this is the first tarot book I ever bought. This is The Ultimate Guide to Tarot by Liz Dean. This is the book that the bulk of my early tarot learning came from. And honestly, I do really recommend this one. Right, I've moved the coffee so I don't have any kind of coffee-based disaster on all of my tarot books. I think this is a really solid guidebook for a beginner. You've got lovely full colour, big clear illustrations of all of the Rider-Waite-Smith cards. I think this imagery is taken from is it the Radiant Rider-Waite-Smith? So it's not Pamela Coleman Smith's original artwork, but you've got really clear visuals. All of the minors go through what is represented on the card, upright reverse meanings, and then like the elemental, astrological, etc. associations. In the majors, I really love the majors in this book. So this is the High Priestess, and you can see there's a lot more for the major cards. Again, visuals, description, there is upright and reversed meanings, but there's also more about the astrology, the Kabbalah, the specific symbols in the major cards, which I wish was a thing in the minor cards, but then obviously the book would be gigantic. And then you've also got a spread for each of the major arcana cards. So here we've got the Oracle, and it's taking an element of each of the major cards. So with the Emperor, we've got boundaries. And I think this is probably where I got my big boundaries association for the Emperor from. Love Decision for the Lovers. Like, it's a really solid intro to tarot, and I think it's got enough, like with the spreads, it's got enough here to like really get you going, get you reading, which I think is a thing that a lot of Tarot 101 books kind of are missing a little bit, is it just tells you the meanings, whereas this, I think, does get you reading. So that is The Ultimate Guide to Tarot by Liz Dean. Okay, next up, this absolute tome. This is Benebell Wen's Holistic Tarot, an integrative approach to using tarot for personal growth. Gonna be honest, I haven't read this in as much depth as I would like. So we've got at the front a cyclopedia of card meanings, which I do like to have because Benebell Wen takes a bit of a different approach than the Liz Dean one in a lot of ways. Benebell Wen, honestly, you can tell that she really is like a scholar. That's the approach that this book has taken. She's really combined a lot of sources and interpretations, but also has her own interpretations of the card in here, which is not necessarily what the Liz Dean one does. I think the Liz Dean is a bit more traditional, whereas this one you can tell that an individual person has written it and has included their viewpoints. And then there's a lot more that I really haven't explored. I don't know. There's a lot about reading spreads, which I have looked at this because I really enjoy, and you'll see when I grab my spread books, I really enjoy the like mechanics of how a tarot spread works. I think that's really interesting. So this I've enjoyed, in the fundamentals of reading spreads. There's loads in here. This honestly is a Bible. Devising tarot spreads, which also I've had a look through, reading tarot for yourself, reading tarot for other people, the kinds of questions, and then some more like Golden Dawn, hermetic, esoteric type stuff, which I really know very little, if anything, about, and I haven't got to this portion of the book yet. There is so much in here, and I will also say that Benebell went on her website. Provides loads of free resources actually, but specifically if you've got this book, there's a couple of sort of like self-study courses that you can do with this book. There's one for beginners, and then there are, I think, 1 or 2 more advanced ones which take you through some of the like more advanced, a little bit more specific stuff in the second half of this book, which I think is really, really helpful, because you get this book, you get nearly 900 pages, and it is a bit intimidating, but she's got some courses to kind of break it down and guide you through it, which I think is really helpful. I say courses, it's like a reading guide and then some activities that she recommends, but I would recommend this. But it is a lot, and it can be overwhelming, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend this for beginners. I said this wasn't going to be a recommendations video, but I can't help giving you my opinions, apparently. Okay, next up, I've got a couple of Rachel Pollack ones. So this is the new Tarot Handbook, Master the Meanings of the Cards. Have I read this? Not really. I've grabbed it as my reference guide when I've done a reading a few times. There are some spreads in here for the majors, and I think spreads for the suits of the minors, or the courts perhaps. Yeah, reading for the suit of wands. And this is a tarot guidebook. This is a Rider-Waite-Smith based tarot guidebook by Rachel Pollack. I bought this for a couple of quid secondhand. I don't know if this will stay with me forever. I need to actually read this one and see how it fits into my practice. And then on a similar note, I also have not yet read 78 Degrees of Wisdom by Rachel Pollack, because this one again I bought secondhand for a couple of quid. This is a bit of a tarot classic, and I think this is more like essays, I believe. Perhaps I am making that up, but I think this also is a little bit more personal, which I think this one I will probably read more or less front to back, whereas the other one that I've got, the new Tarot Handbook, is a handbook to the tarot. So this also, I can see here, connects the cards together a bit, and I think dives a little bit deeper perhaps. Either way, this is a classic. I feel like I absolutely have to read it, and then I will see what I think. I'll see whether I hold on to it or not. I know that a lot of people say you absolutely have to have these kind of classic texts, and a lot of people say they were very significant, but you know, time moves on. But so I'll see where I land. But this one I really can't tell you my thoughts on, because I haven't read it yet. Okay, this is my final kind of general tarot Rider-Waite-Smith based guidebook, or like handbook to the tarot. This is Radical Tarot, Queer the Cards, Liberate Your Practice and Create the Future by Charlie Claire Burgess. I have not shut up about this book since I got it in late September when it came out last year. If you don't already know, if you somehow missed all of my chat, I'm obsessed with this book. I love Charlie Claire Burgess's approach to the tarot, and I love their kind of mission in this book. Is as it says, queer the cards, liberate your practice and create the future. It is really reworking and kind of digging into the different tarot archetypes, especially in the majors, taking those archetypes, digging into them. Where did they come from? What do they reflect in like traditional interpretations, and how can we apply them to the world that we actually live in today, and the people that exist in the world today, and the people that are reading tarot, and the people that we're reading tarot for. I think this is fantastic. I think this is a really solid guidebook of what the cards mean, but also an updated and I think much more accessible guidebook. This is going to be relevant to a much larger majority of people than the traditional interpretations of the Rider-Waite-Smith, which after all was drawn over 100 years ago. So I could not recommend this one more highly. Alright, so that was my Rider-Waite-Smith based books, and I'm now going to go through my non-Rider-Waite-Smith system books. First up, on top of the stack, this is Understanding Aleister Crowley's Thoth Tarot by Milo DuQuette. I think this was the most highly recommended Thoth Handbook at the time when I bought my Thoth deck. Have I read it? No. I've been dipping into it. It's been really useful in my deck and walk studies that I've been doing, but I think I was full of hope and aspiration to be able to read Thoth, and then I got this and I read some bits, and I think I psyched myself out of it, and I got a little bit overwhelmed by all of the esoteric information that is in the cards, and I think I just need to get over that. And if I don't understand it completely the first time round, that's okay, actually. So I can't recommend this or not recommend this because I haven't really read it and I haven't got to grips with the Thoth Tarot yet. But that is one of my goals for 2024, is to read the books I've got. I did a whole video on this. Basically, read the books I've got, use the decks I've got, understand the systems that I own. So hopefully by the end of this year, I will have a bit more to say about this book. Equally, if you would recommend a different Thoth handbook, obviously I know that at some point I need to read Crowley, but that's for future Zully. If there's a handbook that you'd really recommend, let me know. Okay, and now we're on to Marseille books, because I had a bit of a Marseille moment last year. I got the Squid Cake Marseille Tarot, the mass market edition that came out, and I really kind of jumped into Marseille. This one is Alejandro Jodorowsky's The Way of Tarot, the spiritual teacher in the cards. I think, again, I got this because it was really super recommended. I have since learned that Jodorowsky is not so great in terms of the things he includes in his books and the ways that he has not personified, but personified the cards. I wish I could think of a better word right now, but I haven't actually read it yet, so I can't really speak to that. But in terms of him as a person, I think a lot of people not so much of a fan, which I didn't know when I bought this book because it was just hugely recommended. So I own it. I will read it. I will see what I think. But it is not the only Marseille book that I've got. I also have, and this one I've read a lot more of. I've dug into a lot more because it's the open reading style rather than just like a Bible of card meanings. And this is Tarot, the Open Reading by Yoav, and I really enjoyed this. I found this, enjoyed isn't quite the right word, but I really got on with this really well. I liked the way that everything was laid out and the way that he went through everything, and this was very helpful in my Marseille phase that I had spring summer last year. I've kind of dropped off of reading Marseille, but I want to get back into it. I did a little Marseille for May last year. I plan on doing the same again this year and really digging into my Marseille decks and my Marseille study. But that is not all. I really had a secondhand book buying phase, and this was one of them. So this is Marseille Tarot Towards the Art of Reading by Camelia, Elias. And have I opened this? No, but it was really highly recommended by people who I trust rather than just the general internet saying what are the must-read Marseille books. I believe she's authored a lot of books, and I'm kind of really intrigued by the titles of a lot of the books that she's authored, but this is the one that I own, and I think this is, again, specifically about how to read Marseille rather than just what do the cards mean, because I think that's where I get a little bit stuck or a little bit articulated, a little bit intimidated with Marseille, is because it's not just that it's a pip deck. There's it's got its own language, and the way you read it is different to how you might read like a Rider-Waite-Smith or another fully illustrated deck. So this I am looking forward to, because I think this is going to be not an easier read, but I think this really, going back into the Yoav and reading this and having those kind of approaches is going to really help me feel more confident with reading Marseille, because the card meanings I can develop over time, like I did with the Rider-Waite-Smith. And then finally, this also was secondhand. This is Tarot on Earth, A Practical Approach to the Cards by Tom Benjamin, and this is a workbook. So this is working your way through the Marseille Tarot. I think it's not exclusively, explicitly based on or aimed at the new Marseille reader, but I think it makes the most sense for the Marseille deck. And I've heard really good things. I'm also really relieved to see how giant the font is. That makes it feel a lot more approachable. So yeah, this is I'll try and find, this is a workbook, and it has places to write things in, and it's got some, yeah, so it's got some like pencil marks in from whoever had this book previously. And I will probably do it in a separate journal because that's my style. But this, I think, my plan is to kind of read the other books I've got, and then in my Marseille May work through this and get a little bit more confident reading Marseille. Okay, my next stack is my stack of deck-specific books that were bought separately. So, first up, we have She is Sitting in the Night, Revisioning Thea's Tarot by Oliver Pickle, art by Ruth West. So, this deck is Thea's Tarot, which I don't own, but I want. And now that I have this book, this was a birthday present last year. Now that I have this book, I really extra want to get my hands on Thea's Tarot. So Thea's Tarot was created by Ruth West in the, was it the 80s? Yeah, art by Ruth West, 1984. So it was a deck produced in the 80s that is specifically like a feminist, female-centered, queer woman centering deck in the artwork. And I think this book works well by itself, which is why I was happy to have it without having the deck yet. But that said, I do want the deck because I think it looks really cool, and I think I would, well, I know that I would like to have this deck as like a piece of queer feminist tarot history in my collection. It is based on, the meanings are Rider-Waite-Smith based, so like I say, I think you can use this probably quite happily as a general Rider-Waite-Smith based guidebook, as long as you've got a foundation in Rider-Waite-Smith. Does that make sense? I've said Rider-Waite-Smith too many times and it's lost all meaning. But yeah, this I'm really glad to have, but I do want the deck to go along with it. Alright, as for books that I do have the deck for, this is the dazzling Eldritch Overload Codex. Look at these edges. I unboxed this and the deck on my channel when I got the deck last year. It was a Kickstarter. And it's like a cyberpunk, futuristic, kind of RPG, D&D vibes tarot. So this codex is honestly really good. It was expensive to buy separately, I won't lie, but I really do like it. Got the full color artwork. And then these descriptions are actually really good. We've got like a description of the card up here and what is being shown, because obviously it's based in this otherworldly setting. So it's not necessarily obvious what you're looking at. And then we've got upright reverse meanings. And then down here, there are some little like prompts. You could use them as journaling prompts. You could use them to kind of dive deeper into the card. I think these kinds of things are really helpful. Like say if I pull the world in a spread and I have no instant intuitive idea why that would make sense, or you know sometimes you pull a card and you're just stumped, whereas these prompts are actually quite good. They get you to think a little bit deeper, because I know personally if I pull a card and I'm completely stumped, it's like everything I know about tarot or myself just vanishes out of my brain, and so it's nice to have something to kind of jog my mind a little bit and get me thinking about how it could apply and how it could be useful. The other thing that is really cool about this book, and why I got the like hard copy codex instead of just there is a little leaflet that comes with the deck, but this has a D&D 5e compatible module, and I think this is just so cool. So it goes through the world, it goes through like subclasses, and there's like monsters in here, there's random tables, there's ways to use the deck in game, and how to make a little D&D campaign, mini campaign in this world with this deck, which I just think is so cool. I'm a big D&D person, and I also really want to play a sci-fi campaign, so I had to. The deck itself, I don't think you need to know anything about D&D to read with, although it is cool to see some references, but it does have that kind of RPG, sci-fi, fantasy vibe to it. Like there's non-human races, and there's all sorts of weird technological stuff happening, and the kind of setup of like the good guys, the bad guys. The big bad is of course capitalism, so it's really good. Also, if you spent more than 5 minutes on this channel, you know that this aesthetic, the pink, the purple, the holographic, it's me. Alright, this one, the Voyager Tarot, Way of the Great Oracle by James Wanless. This, I was so pleased to find, because I couldn't find a copy of this for ages, and then this popped up secondhand for a not outrageous price. This goes with the Voyager Tarot, which I do have, and I used this pretty recently actually. I did for the month of Sagittarius, or the zodiac season of Sagittarius. I was doing my daily, it's like a daily study practice, but it's a very, very short and quick study practice. So I wouldn't say I'm anything close to an expert in this deck, but I was pulling a card, I was reading the entry. I really like this, and I know there is so much more I can dive into. I really want to do a very dedicated deep dive with this deck, because there's just so much in here. There's so much intention in how this deck was structured, and I think this guidebook is really, really fantastic at laying that out and explaining it to you, obviously. So if that's something you're interested in with this deck, with the Voyager Tarot, I would really recommend this, because it explains a lot of the symbols. It explains a lot of the associations. Like, there's all of this astrology, alchemy, I Ching, geomancy, that has all kind of been considered in the creation of the deck, which I wouldn't have known just from looking at the cards and reading the entries in the little guidebook that came with the deck. So I'm really glad to have this, the Voyager Tarot guidebook. Next up, What the Fuck is Tarot and How Do I Do It by Bakara, Witner, and illustrations by Autumn Whitehurst. This is I think this actually preceded the Way Home Tarot, which I have and I love. It was just a guidebook, and then based on the illustrations, I think there was demand for a deck to go with it. So they do go together, but they don't. You don't need to have one and the other, because they were not created at the same time. Have I actually read this guidebook too much? No, because I find when I read this deck, I don't always need a guidebook, and I don't really reach for this when I'm reading with other decks. I also don't love how the quartz are done in here, but that's all personal preference. And then there's also a little bit of spreads and how to give a reading, which I think I skimmed through. All being said, the charm of this book is in the kind of like no bullshit, like here, a note on fucking gender. Like, it's in the style of it, which I know that a lot of people, myself included, not such a fan of the wishy-washy, light, love and light, live, love, love, good vibes tarot, and like dressing it up in mysticism when that's not necessarily everybody's jam. Essentially, I don't have a whole ton of thoughts on this book because I haven't really dug into it, but that's one of my, like I say, it's a bit of a depth here. That's one of my goals this year, is to read this with the Way Home more and then decide if I need to keep it around or not. Because really, at the end of the day, how many tarot handbooks does one person need? Finally, in the tarot handbooks, I need this one. This is the Terra Volatile guidebook. Again, if you've been here for 5 minutes, I know I was like, oh, my aesthetic is pink and purple and sparkly. My aesthetic is also this like grungy bones and stuff. The Terra Volatile is my favorite deck, I think. I think I'm confident in saying that. And it didn't come with a guidebook. The website, by the way, their website, I'm assuming they've kept it all up since publishing this. Their website has a lot of information on the Terra Volatile deck, so you don't need this, but I needed it because I love the deck so much, and it's gorgeous. Again, it's a Bible. Like, it's huge. It's 500 pages with these gorgeous full color illustrations and additional images and some of the like inspirations behind the cards. It explains what the card means. It explains some of the specific imagery that was used, some of the inspirations, like I said. And it also has the additional vessels suit, which is this alchemical kind of ether suit, which I keep saying I'm gonna dig into, but there is so much I want to do and so little time to do it in. And then there's also some cool spread stuff and like how to read at the back, which again I haven't really dug into, but these are the additional cards that came with. Did these? Okay, so I have like the whole shebang. I have the original deck, I have the expansion that you can get because there are multiple cards for a lot of the cards. There are multiple choices for a lot of the cards. And then there was this like yes, no, you are asking the wrong questions. I don't remember if these came with the original deck or with the expansion, but like it's just beautiful. This is like a coffee table tarot guidebook. I am thrilled to have it. I won't lie. This is an expensive little addition to my collection, but for my favorite deck, it was worth it for me. So that is the Tarot Volatile Handbook. All right, that was my last deck specific book, tarot book. And now I'm moving on to other stuff. We've got some like more specific topics, some spread books, some tarot journaling type books. So first up, 36 Secrets by T. Susan Chang, a Tacanic journey through the minor arcana of the tarot. How's my tarot walk going? Tarot walk, Decan walk going? Oh, I love that we opened on the Nine of Swords. That tells you how my Decan walk is going. It's been better, but that's okay. Like I've got the rest of my life to study the Decans. The wheel keeps turning. The camera isn't focusing. There we go. They'll keep rolling around, so it's fine. And I really like this. Most of this information is up on her blog, which you can access for free. But I like having it in a physical book form, and I also like the extra bits and pieces that are in here. I like being able to flip between entries, so it was worth the purchase for me. And I'm glad I have it. It's also just, there's something in my brain, it's easier to reach for this, to pull it out, to take some notes on a Decan or to read up on a Decan than it is to navigate through the internet and get distracted, because we all know that I will. So that is 36 Secrets. This is Tarot and Astrology by Corinne Kenner. This one I've also been using for the Decan walk, but I had this prior, and I think this is a really fantastic book. This is a book that I would recommend. Not that I wouldn't recommend 36 Secrets, but I would generally recommend this if you are interested in the astrological associations of the tarot. This has a bit of a primer on astrology in general, of like the planets and signs and houses. Like not much, but if you're completely unfamiliar, it tells you what they are. And then we have each card in the 78, whereas obviously 36 Decans is just the minors 2 through 10. Each card and what planet, sign, or zodiac Decan it is associated with. So here we've got the Sun is the Sun card. Death is Scorpio. Like here you can see the void of course moon and what that means. So there are little bits of astrological information in here if you're unfamiliar, which I think is really helpful. Or even just as a bit of a reminder, because I always forget what the void of course moon is supposed to be or mean. And then we've got in the minors a little Decan wheel and which Decan the card belongs to. So here 3 of Pentacles, Mars in Capricorn, and you can see that it is the second Decan of Capricorn. The thing that I think is really fantastic is that this book is so, like, it's so accessible. Like you can really get really deep into the weeds of astrology or tarot separately, so together it can be very overwhelming. There are so many different like rabbit holes to follow that it can just be a lot, whereas this is like, it's a page, it's not a very big page of what in the 3 of Pentacles and the Rider-Waite-Smith meaning, what in the 3 of Pentacles is reflected by Mars in Capricorn. And then also it reminds you of things like Mars is exalted in Capricorn, he's an honoured guest and he's received with all the respect his station affords him. So that tells you what Mars in Capricorn means it astrologically and then what in the card ties in with that. So I just think it makes it easy to understand the tarot and astrology, the astrology in the tarot. And like I say, I would really recommend it on that basis. I think it's been a really valuable resource for me and kind of spurred me into looking further into astrology. Do I want to show you my astrology books? Because I mostly have them for tarot reasons. I'm going to grab them. We're having an astrology interlude. Alright, so briefly, You Were Born for This by Chani Nicholas. This was recommended on the Honeycomb website, so the Honeycomb astrology planners that you can get. I really enjoy them, but they give you the planner itself does not interpret the astrology, it just tells you what's happening. And they recommended this book, which has a lot of info on your sun, moon and rising and what they mean for you. It goes through all the different like combinations of like sun in Capricorn, moon in Capricorn, rising in Capricorn, etc. And I find this very accessible. I really like her writing style, and I know enough about astrology and have listened to her podcast and trust Honeycomb that I trust her. And again, it's not too like woo, wishy-washy, how to manifest your higher perfect self kind of bullshit, which I don't really truck with. I have this one, Astrology for Mystics, which explores the water houses in your natal chart and what if you have, for instance, Sagittarius in the 8th house, what that can mean and how that would be interpreted by an astrologer. I bought this because I have loads of shit in water signs, but then I realized that the water houses are occupied by fire signs in my chart and I have nothing in any fire sign whatsoever. But this is still really interesting. I just can't be like, oh, this means that my sorrow and sacrifice or whatever. It does tell you, so it's the signs in the houses, and obviously I have my fire signs in the various houses. I don't have any planets in the water houses, but it's still really interesting and kind of useful, interesting information to know because I do have so much going on in water signs in my birth chart. Moon Phase Astrology by Raven Caldera. I don't think I told you who this one was by. So this is Astrology for Mystics, Exploring the Occult Depths of the Water Houses in Your Natal Chart by Tiana Lee McKellar. And then moving back again to Moon Phase Astrology, The Lunar Key to Your Destiny by Raven Caldera. Do you see what I mean? All of this like destiny stuff is not my favorite like way of phrasing astrology, tarot, making it super mystical, but this is still really interesting. It's like a little mini essay on the moon phases in all of the different signs. So this has like a year's worth of moons, like whatever the moon is doing, you can look up that moon phase in that sign and it gives you, it's got a name. I don't know where these names came from because I just don't know. I don't know if they were in like came from Raven Caldera or if they have other origins to these names. Like anyway, this is really interesting and it's one that I just dip in and out of when I feel like doing a little bit of astrology, or like a little bit of astrology study, but don't want to really get into anything. I just look up what moon phase we're in and then read that entry. There's also, so there's this little essay and then there's quotes, and then at the beginning it does go through the degrees, how to figure out the moon phases, all that. Luckily I have my Honeycomb planner which tells me and then what each moon phase means by itself, and like a little bit of intro to aspects and like what is a shadow of the natal moon and what's your natal moon and all this kind of stuff. So this is really interesting. This one is less because I want to apply it to astrology, to tarot, and more just because I'm interested. But yeah, I like it. And then finally, this one barely fits in the frame. This again is less to do with tarot and more just I want to understand astrology and feel a little bit more competent when I'm reading astrology stuff in order to be able to apply it to tarot. because I can't just like learn like flashcard meanings of like, what does this sign mean? What does this house mean? What does this planet mean? And then like add them up to get the tarot interpretation of that. I'm just like this. It's the way my brain works. I have to like, I do things in the wrong direction. Regardless, it means I need to really understand astrology, and then I will feel happy to interpret it tarot wise, rather than just like learning off by heart what the third decan of Virgo means. Anyhow, this is the Astrology for Yourself workbook by Douglas Block and Demetra George. I have barely started it, but I really, really want to dig into this. I don't know what I do with all of my time, because I seem to waste a lot of it and I don't get into these cool like journaly workbook things. Like, I don't think this is super complicated to do, so I don't know what is stopping me. But yeah, like I'm looking at this, I'm like, I don't know what Urania is, and there's a lot of stuff like the planets, the houses, the signs I'm reasonably comfortable with, but then the asteroids, like Chiron, no clue. And I know that Chiron is doing something, or Venus is doing something aspecting my natal Chiron placement this Venus in Sagittarius, and I kind of would like to have a clue what that means. So there's a lot to dig into, and I'm gonna again, depth here, go through this over the course of the year. I'm gonna have to film at the end or at the very beginning of 2025 or at the end of 2024 how I actually did with all of these lofty goals I have set for myself, because my personal life is going to be hella busy for a lot of this year as well. Anyhow, that is my last astrology book, and with that we will move back to actual tarot stuff that you came here to see. So in like kind of niche tarot themes, this is Easy Tarot Combinations, How to Connect the Cards for Insightful Readings by Josephine Ellershaw. This I picked up kind of on a whim a little while back because I just thought it seemed cool. This idea of like cross-referencing the tarot is absolutely my jam. If you've seen my tarot maths video, that was kind of a similar vibe, and I think I did tarot maths and I did mapping the minor arcana onto the major arcana that had this kind of, that came from the same place in my brain as like having this way to cross-reference the tarot, and this is in a similar kind of vein. So like the Hermit, it's got a little what the card means. I tend to ignore this because I have a million handbooks, and then similar and supporting cards. So if you draw the Hermit with the Hierophant, that has this wise teacher or mentor. So if you have the Hermit and the Hierophant, like that's how they can affect each other. And then more specifically, combinations. This does not include every single tarot card combination because I don't know what the maths is for that, but it's an awful lot, and this book would be too big. It would be too big. But say if you draw the Hermit and the Fool, what that message could be. So take time to consider before embarking upon an entirely new path. It's just really cool. So I like pulling this out sometimes when I'm doing a reading, just as a way of playing with the tarot. I really like playing with the structure of the tarot, and this kind of taps into that a little bit. So I think it's interesting. A lot of it's quite predictive. Like here, the Three of Pentacles and the Devil can indicate being a workaholic. That's not really how I read the tarot. I don't read it predictively or to address certain like specific people. Like I know, for instance, with the court cards, a more traditional reader might say that the Knight of Wands represents somebody particular and specific. That's not really how I read. So a lot of these are a bit too predictive, like job loss, a workaholic, like, but it's interesting all the same. And I like having this as something that gives me those more predictive, more specific readings, because that's not how I read. Like, it's just interesting to get that perspective. So this is actually really cool. Easy Tarot Combinations. This is a court card book. This is Your Tarot Court, Read Any Deck with Confidence by Ethany Dawn. I bought this because I was tripped up by court cards, as many of us are. And in the most part, I really like this book. It goes over the 16 court cards in a couple of different ways. And I'll be honest, the structure of this book is not always the most intuitive because it goes over things a couple times, but I like it. And usually I'm specifically looking for, say, like what does the King of Swords mean? So I can come here, I can look at the kings as like an overview, and then I can find that specific card somewhere else in the archetype. So like here we've got what does each king mean, and then in these archetypes, what does each card mean as an archetype. So like I say, it's not the most intuitive way of laying out the court, but it's only 16 cards, so it's not that bad. If it was like the whole 78, that would be a bit of a headache, but I like this. I also like that there's different decks to display the different cards. I think that adds a little bit of diversity to who those cards can represent, especially when we're talking about archetypes. We're talking about what kind of person the Page of Pentacles is, for instance. There's a little bit at the front about, where was it? Addressing things like gender and hierarchy. Yeah, titles, gender, and physical identities. And how just because the Knight of Wands in this deck is a young white man doesn't mean that it can only be a young white man, for instance. And like breaking that down a little bit, which I think is good to have. So we've got this like traditional interpretation of like a page often represented a young woman, or was supposed to represent a young woman when you draw it in that predictive way, like who is this person? So I think it's good to have that as a reference to know where everything's come from. But then she also does very clearly state that that's just one way of reading it, which I appreciate having. So that is your Tarot Court by Ethony Dawn. I like this. I found this really valuable, especially as almost a bit of a cheat sheet. And that sounds kind of bad, but especially when I was like previously getting to grips with the courts, and I feel much more confident in them now, although they still are the cards that are going to trip me up. If anything's going to trip me up, it's a court card. But it was really helpful. So if I was doing a reading and I pulled like a King of Wands for myself and I'd be like, I don't know what the hell this is supposed to mean, I could go here and I could read what that archetype can represent, and what, if that was a person, what they might be like. And then I tend to read court cards as an aspect of myself or whoever I'm reading for. So it's quite handy to have that as like, okay, if you're really leaning into the King of Wands side of yourself, what would that look like? What might that involve you doing? So I found this really handy, and I don't think I'm going to be getting rid of it anytime soon. Yeah. All right, I've got a couple of spread books. So first up, this is the Tarot Spreads Yearbook by Chelsea Pippin Mizzy. And this is a pretty recent acquisition for me, and so far I have been working through this kind of week by week, spread by spread. So it's 52 tarot spreads for getting to know yourself, and because it's 52 spreads, you could absolutely do one a week. It's split up into 4 seasons. You've got the season of growth, the season of shadow, the season of change, and the season of care. I just decided to start at the beginning and kind of work my way through it. You could do it however the hell you liked. I probably am going to tab spreads that I really enjoy, and then also just use this as a bit of a spread library for myself to come back to. When I feel like I want to do a spread, I want to do something a little bit meaty, but I don't have anything specific I want to ask the tarot. I like to have a spread book to be like, okay, I want to play with my cards, I want to get into a spread, but I don't know what. So far I'm really liking this. In a similar vein, that is what I used Tarot by the Moon by Victoria Constantino for. Is I do have, and I do work through it with the moon months. So here, like May, the flower moon, what that means, and then there's a few different spreads based around the theme of the flower moon. So I've done that, and I've kind of worked through it, and I might think, okay, I want to do a spread. What month are we in? We're in January, which Have I ever read this introduction? I don't think so. So January is the Wolf Moon, so I might decide I want to do a spread, and then we've got here, it's about tapping into your potential and uncovering things and awakening dormant energies. I think I've done this spread before and I've really enjoyed it. So I might pick a spread for the appropriate month, or I might just go through the book at spreads I've tabbed and what do I feel like doing. I really like this. I actively dislike actually the way a lot of these spreads are laid out. I completely ignore like these because they don't make a lot of sense to me. They don't make it easy. Like, what is this? I think this post-it is how I actually laid the cards out when I did it, because what is this? How does this help you understand the reading? It doesn't, in my opinion. Anyway, I really like this. I think this is a really solid spread book resource. Personally, I don't love that it's like monthly. I wish it was zodiac seasonally, but in terms of like the snow moon, the wolf moon, the strawberry moon, I think those are month specific. Is that true? I don't know. I really do like this. This is a really fun book to have. Right, when it comes to making tarot spreads make sense, this is the book. This is Tarot Spreads by Barbara Moore, Layouts and Techniques to Empower Your Readings. This was another one I picked up secondhand for a couple of quid, and this has been so valuable. This is a resource of spreads, a collection of spreads. It's a spread book. It also is how to kind of format a tarot spread, techniques to add to any spread, and how to kind of alter tarot spreads on the fly, do-it-yourself spread design, like how to make tarot spreads work. So like I said earlier, I really enjoy the mechanics of a tarot spread, and that's what this book does, but it also has this really good bank of spreads in the front, and the way it's laid out in the contents, or possibly the index. Yeah, it's towards the end. We've got spread cross references. So there is a big list at the front of what each spread is called, but that's not necessarily telling you what the spread is suited for. So here we've got like achieving a goal, advice. Maybe you want to do a spread about emotional upheaval. Here is a handful of spreads that are suited to that topic. So this is just a really useful, really valuable for me spread resource, but also I really enjoy the way that she's broken down how to put a spread together and how to read the shape of a spread, because like I said with that moon book, those make no sense and those don't make it easier to read or to connect the meanings of cards. And in here she really goes into how moving like one card in a spread, so going from like my 3 cards, I sometimes do them 1, 2, 3, or I do them 1, 2, 3, and how just that change, even with the same question and the same cards that you've pulled, how that can affect how you read the connections between the cards. And like I said, I'm all about cross-referencing tarot and mapping cards onto other cards and reading those connections. So this has been just extremely interesting and extremely valuable, and I would recommend it. Oh my god, I forgot this book. This is Tarot and Tequila by David A. Ross. It's a tarot guide with cocktails. My friend got me this for my birthday, and first of all, this pink. Second of all, I love tequila-based cocktails. Third of all, it's legitimately a tarot guidebook. The Fool, basic definition, reverse basic definition, tequila definition. The tequila definition is like applied. Again, essentially, it's like an applied meaning. So like if you pull, I guess it's like a predictive meaning almost. Like if you pull the Fool upright, just get in your car and drive. You're gonna have an amazing night. And then it's also a cocktail recipe book. So like here, the Fool, the mystical pairing. Does the sound of something new excite you? And it's a cocktail. I love this. And because this deck I think also exists. This is, is it called the Sugar Skull Tarot or something? I don't know. But the book is published by Simon & Schuster. So I assume, did they also publish the deck? Anyway, I'm like 98% sure this is also a deck that exists that you can have as a deck. So I don't think I need it. well, I don't need it, but you know what I mean. That would be really fun. And I can imagine like a very fun cocktail evening where you pull cards with the deck and then like find the cocktail. Yeah, like it's really cool. And I just want to see what the world is, because that is my year card. Wheel of Fortune cocktail. Gin, iced green tea, honey syrup, mint leaves. That sounds delicious. Like they're not all tequila based cocktails. And then I'm also in a death year. Tequila, mezcal, lime juice, charcoal syrup, lime. That sounds delicious. It's really cool. So there's not a cocktail for every single minor card, but it is a full guidebook. Like it's legitimate. Like I thought it was a gimmick, but it's legitimately a guidebook and then also a cocktail recipe book. How, like, it's just so fun. It's the kind of thing that I would never have bought for myself because it's a fairly basic guidebook with a cocktail recipe book, but like I'm so glad to have it. Like it was the perfect gift. My last little stack of books is my tarot journal question type books. Firstly, because I've had it for the longest out of this stack, and it is the rest are all by the same author. This is Tarot for Yourself by Mary K. Greer, a workbook for the inward journey. This is a 35th anniversary edition, and I don't know when this edition was published, but this, much like the Rachel Pollack 78 Degrees of Wisdom, this is like a mainstay of tarot. I feel like everybody has read this book. This edition was published in 2019, and this was the 35th anniversary, so I think this book has been around for, what, 40 years now? And it's a workbook which I am working through with the Tarot Volatile. I'm not writing in this book, I'm writing in a separate journal because that is the kind of person that I am, but it has all of these exercises like how to find your birth card and your hidden factor cards, and then this is my sun sign and things, like getting acquainted with the cards. There's some path working and some like journal type prompts in here. I love that we have suggested reading. I come from not even an academic background because I've never actually worked in academia. I've just paid a lot of money to learn in academia. But I love a bibliography. I love a reading list. And yeah, tarot journaling, different spreads and ways to kind of get to know the tarot. But I'm using this specifically as getting to know a specific tarot deck. And again, this is one I want to work through this year. I'm determined. And the reason, or part of the reason that I'm not writing in this book is because I think this would be a very cool way to deep dive a deck. And I don't remember if that was an original thought I had or if that came exclusively from Laura's video about ways to deep dive a deck. Tarot for Yourself. So the next and final 4 books that I have are all by Drea Bloom, who sent me these. I literally received them yesterday, sent me these for review, so I will be working my way through these. I will be prioritizing these, working my way through them and letting you know my thoughts. But I'm very excited because some of these have been on my wish list forever. So let us start with Tarot for Transformation, which is so big it does not actually fit in the frame. And this is Using the Major Arcana to Discover Your Best Self and Create a Life Worth Living. And this is huge. This is huge. I'm so keen to dig into this book. I think this is going to be the first one that I work through. So this is a workbook, a journal-based workbook that goes through the major arcana. And this is probably the closest to a self-help book that I ever intend on getting, because each major arcana card has a theme, and then each chapter is based on that theme and is based on how to work through that theme with yourself, and also some journaling prompts and how it connects to the tarot card. So it's like one part tarot workbook, one part personal workbook. And I'm really actually very excited to get into this. This is going to be the year of journaling for me. I don't know where that came from, but I'm certainly not mad about it. So for instance, let us go to, I'm in a death year, addressing chronic pain, processing loss and grief. That's a bit heavy. I'm in a personal death year for my birthday to my birthday, and then 2024 is a wheel year, which is fate, destiny, and writing the story of your life. That sounds a bit more cheerful. 196. This book is massive. It's nearly 500 pages. So as an example, we have the Wheel of Fortune. We've got some quotes. We've got this isn't Pamela Coleman Smith's artwork. Who illustrated this? The illustrator, Katia Little. So we have our illustration. There's a couple of pages of quotes, and then this is about the card and what it represents, and then some practices, some journal questions. And then she's brought in, like, even just like I say, I received these books yesterday, 2 days ago. What is time? I have flipped through them. This is in no way an opinion on them yet, but she brings in so many different sources and ideas, which I just think is brilliant, because like I say, I'm all about cross-referencing and making connections, and part of that is bringing external stuff in and connecting it to the cards. So we've got like the Fool's, is it the Fool's journey, the hero's journey. Hell yeah, realities are socially constructed. I should stop exploring this literally on camera because we'll be here forever. But this is, like I say, it seems like it's one part tarot workbook and one part personal workbook. And I don't imagine I'll be getting through this quickly, but I can't wait to dig into it. I probably should do it in order. I'll read the introduction and see what she says. I probably should do it in order, but I might dive in with like my year cards, because I think that might be a really cool way to introduce myself to it. Or equally, I think you could decide you want to work on boundaries. Ooh, the Chariot for boundaries, that's cool. And then belief systems for the Emperor. You could probably like decide what you want to dive into, what you want to work on, and work on that with the given card. I really like how these are not necessarily what a lot of people would think the obvious choices. Like, parenting your inner child is not under the Empress, which I really appreciate. And like I say, belief systems being under the Emperor instead of the Hierophant is really cool. Managing anxiety under justice. Yes, so this just seems incredibly cool. Also, in the Tarot for Transformation series, this is the Pentacles book. I know the Swords one has recently come out, and I want to buy it just to add to the collection, but also I have 2 of the Tarot Transformation books to work through before I need that. But anyway, this is a journey of healing and self-growth through the minor arcana, whereas the major arcana book had a different theme for each of the major cards. I think that each suit is going to be a little more like focused as a suit. But like I say, I've not read it yet, so I could be entirely wrong. And this one kind of gets straight into it a little bit more. There's no contents, there's no page numbers either. And yeah, I feel sorry for the Pentacles. This suit always comes last in books about tarot cards and meanings. So this was the first one of the minors that she published. It's the second one. And then Suits has just come out. Swords has just come out. So it's kind of similar. There's journal prompts. There's delving into the symbolism of the cards. Again, it's the Rider-Waite-Smith. And this is Pamela Coleman Smith's artwork in this one. But it's Rider-Waite-Smith based with the symbolism. We're relating to Zeus. So there's reference to Greek myth and deity in here. Journal prompts, activities. Like, there's so much in here. This is, I don't know how many pages this is because there are no page numbers, but it's a chunky book. It's about one suit. So I, again, can't wait to dig into this. I think it's going to be really cool. I also received a tarot shadow work journal. Shadow work is something I'm a little bit hesitant to do because I feel like the way that I read tarot, being less predictive is inherently closer to shadow work. Every time I read tarot, at least every time I do a bigger spread, not so much my like daily card pulls. This one is, again, laid out card by card, and I think this is all 78. Yeah, like we've got the swords here. So this one actually has space for you to do the journaling in the book, which I doubt I will do because that makes me uncomfortable. I don't know, it just does. So we've got shadowy prompts for each of the 78 cards, and it is kind of what it says on the tin. It's a shadow work tarot journal, which I also will be digging into. This one is less exciting to me than the Tarot for Transformation, purely because it is just journal prompts and not cool exploration and connecting of things, but I'm sure this will also be very valuable. This is the final book of this video and the fourth and final book I received from Drea Bloom for review. This is the Tarot Activity book. I was so excited to receive this. So it's a tarot activity book. It's a book of ways to play with your tarot deck, essentially. Get to know the deck better, get to know tarot meanings better, that isn't just reading. I've wanted this for ages. There's a couple of tarot activity books out there in the world, and I just think they're such a cool concept. So here, conversation starters. I think this is conversation like with the tarot. Writing and journaling practices, arts and crafts, activities. It just looks so very cool. Like I say, I have only flicked through this. I haven't read the introduction. I haven't tried to do any of these activities yet, but I think it's just a really cool concept. Like I say, sometimes you don't want to do a reading, but you do want to play with your cards, and I think this kind of thing is really cool to have. So like this, you draw or paint a door or a gate, you take as much time as you like, and then you go to your tarot deck and you find the card that lies beyond the structure, which I think is so cool. It's a little bit like pathworky. I'm feeling very pathworky these days, so I think it's very cool that I flipped to this one. Yeah, what exists beyond the gate that you've drawn? And here, what lies on the other side of a wall? Like, I think this is so cool. It's full of such original ideas. I mean, I haven't read it yet, but it looks like it's full of such original, cool ideas. I think it's definitely gonna, even if I don't love every single activity in here, or even if I don't do every single activity in there, there are so many ways to play with the deck that I think it's definitely gonna spark some really cool practices. And I am very excited to dig into this one as well. And with that, this video is finished, and my little video series of my collection as a whole is also finished. That is every tarot and also bonus astrology book that I own, at least the ones that had to be purchased separately from their decks. I have a lot of books. I also, in going through that, have a lot of activity workbooks to get myself through. 2024 is going to be a really fun year, as long as I can stop procrastinating and actually do the things that I have. Anyways, I'm not going to keep you much longer. If you've made it this far into the video, thank you so much for joining me. I really hope you've enjoyed. I hope you have maybe found some books that you think are interesting. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you've got these. What are your favorite books? And of course, I'm always looking to add to my library, so let me know if you have a tarot book that you really love that you would recommend, because one can never have enough books. That is it from me. Thank you so much for watching. Give me a like if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.